I arrived at my daughter's house and unexpectedly overheard my son-in-law on the phone. Why isn't that old man dead yet? At his age, who would ever question natural causes? His words cut through the peaceful evening like a blade, and the birthday gift I carried for my granddaughter suddenly felt unbearably heavy. Marcus Blake, the psychiatrist admired by an entire city, was calmly plotting my death as if it were a carefully scheduled appointment. I didn't step out to confront him. I chose silence. And from that moment, I began to plan. Because the gravest mistake a man can make is underestimating an old grandfather ready to fight for his family. Before we see how this 69-year-old outsmarts his dangerous son-in-law comment where you're listening from today, the October rain drummed against Katie's windows as I pulled up with Lily's birthday gift. A wooden jewelry box I'd carved over 3 weeks. At 69, my hands still knew their way around maple wood, still remembered the patience required to coax beauty from stubborn grain. Lily's 16th birthday party spilled into the backyard, a small gathering of school friends and neighbors. Through the cracked sliding door, I watched my granddaughter glow in her yellow sundress, while Katie moved between guests with mechanical precision, refilling drinks with the obsessive care of someone fighting invisible anxiety. Marcus stood apart, phone pressed to his ear, his back turned toward the house. Dr. Marcus Blake, respected psychiatrist pillar of Portland's medical community. Even from here, I could see tension coiled in his shoulders like a spring wound too tight. I was about to announce myself when his voice cut through the evening air. We need to move faster on this. Why is he even still alive, old fools just burning through our inheritance? The words struck me like ice water. I pressed against the doorframe, the jewelry box suddenly weighing 1,000 pounds. Once Katie inherits everything, we can disappear together like we planned. Marcus continued, dropping his voice to what he thought was a whisper. The old man won't suffer, just a peaceful passing. At his age, who would question a heart attack? 35 years of teaching children had trained me to recognize predators. The false concern, the calculated casualness, the way he discussed my death, like rescheduling a dentist appointment. Trust me, I'm doing this for us, Marcus said, and I could hear his practiced smile. Katie's too drugged up to notice anything anyway. Drugged up. Everything clicked into place. Katie's recent lethargy, her vacant stares, the way she drifted through conversations like someone underwater. I'd blamed stress middle-aged life's natural changes. I'd been a fool, but I wasn't leaving. Not like some frightened old man who'd stumbled onto something too big for him to handle. No, I was staying. I was listening. I was learning, and most importantly, I was planning. Marcus pocketed his phone and rejoined the party, his mask sliding perfectly back into place. The caring husband, the devoted stepfather, the family man planning murder. I watched him kiss Katie's temple with theatrical tenderness, ruffle Lily's hair with false affection. The performance was flawless, which made it terrifying. But every predator has a weakness. Every plan has a flaw. And every man who underestimates a retired teacher who spent decades outsmarting teenagers is about to learn a very hard lesson. Lily spotted me in the doorway, her face lit up with genuine joy, the kind that can't be faked or prescribed. Grandpa, you made it. I stepped forward, forcing a smile. Happy birthday, sweetheart. 16 years old. As she hugged me, she whispered against my ear, I'm so glad you're here. I need to talk to you. Over her shoulder, Marcus watched us with calculating eyes. He thought he was the hunter, thought he'd cornered helpless prey. He had no idea that the old fool burning through his inheritance had just declared war. My mind was already working, cataloging details, forming strategies. Who was on the other end of that phone call? What was his timeline? How long had Katie been drugged? What did Lily know? I didn't leave that backyard party defeated or afraid. I left it armed with purpose. My teacher's brain already 3 steps ahead of a man who thought intelligence was measured by medical degrees rather than decades of hard-won wisdom. Marcus Blake had made his first mistake. It would also be his last. The drive home through Portland's rain-slicked streets gave me time to think. My hands gripped the steering wheel with the same steady pressure I'd once used to guide nervous students through their first woodcuts. Firm, but controlled, ready to adjust at the first sign of danger. The house felt different when I walked through the front door. The same cedar walls I'd installed 40 years ago, but now everything seemed sharper, more significant. This wasn't just my home anymore. It was ground zero in a war I hadn't asked for but fully intended to win. I pulled out a yellow legal pad, the same kind I'd used for lesson planning back when I thought the most dangerous thing I'd face was a room full of hyperactive third graders. At the top of the page I wrote what I know. Marcus was planning to kill me. The conversation wasn't hypothetical, it was operational. He had a timeline, a method, and an accomplice willing to help commit murder. Katie was being drugged. Her behavior over the past months suddenly made terrible sense. The woman who'd once managed her own graphic design business with fierce independence now moved through life like she was viewing it through frosted glass. That wasn't depression, that was chemical manipulation. But why the inheritance was obvious enough. My house was worth nearly $800,000, my retirement savings, another $400,000. Over $1 million was worth killing for, especially if you were desperate. And Marcus was desperate. That tension in his shoulders, the panic beneath his voice. This wasn't greed alone. This was a man backed into a corner, which made him infinitely more dangerous. I turned to a fresh page, what I need to know. Who was his accomplice? Someone with medical knowledge who could make my death look natural? A colleague, perhaps. Another doctor willing to sign off on a convenient heart attack. What was his timeline? The urgency in his voice suggested sooner rather than later. Most importantly, what did Lily know? Her whispered plea for help hadn't been coincidental. She'd seen something, suspected something. At 16, she was smart enough to recognize her mother's behavior wasn't normal. I walked to the mantelpiece where family photos chronicled happier times. Katie at 5, gap-toothed and grinning. Katie at 16, rolling her eyes at my camera. Katie at 38, introducing me to Marcus with shy pride. Dad, I think this is the one, she'd whispered. I'd been so happy to see joy return to her eyes after her first husband's death that I'd ignored the small voice warning me something felt off. That voice had been right. I wouldn't make that mistake again. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows with increasing urgency. I'd always found comfort in Portland's weather, but tonight it felt like nature itself was warning me to hurry. By midnight, I had filled 4 pages with observations, questions, and the beginnings of a plan. I wasn't just an old man anymore. I was a strategist, a protector, a grandfather with everything to lose and nothing left to fear. Marcus Blake thought he was hunting a helpless old fool. Tomorrow, he'd discover he'd awakened something far more dangerous. A teacher who'd spent decades learning that the best defense is a perfectly planned offense. The war had begun, and I intended to win it. The text came Tuesday afternoon. Can you meet me at Washington Park, near the Rose Garden? I need to talk to you about Mom. Lily. I stared at the message, my chest tightening. In my decades of teaching, I'd learned to read between the lines of a child's cry for help. This wasn't teenage drama. This was genuine fear. Washington Park in October was fading beauty. Roses, mostly finished scattered petals clinging to rain-dampened earth. I found Lily on a bench near the fountain, her school backpack clutched like armor. At 16, she had Katie's dark eyes and stubborn chin, but her posture reminded me of myself at her age, holding herself when the world felt too dangerous to navigate alone. Grandpa, thank you for coming. I settled beside her, noting how she glanced around nervously. What's on your mind? She watched a squirrel dart between rose bushes before speaking in barely a whisper. Something's wrong with Mom. Really wrong. And I think Marcus is doing it on purpose. I kept my expression neutral the way I had when students brought me their deepest fears. Tell me what you've noticed. She's different. She used to be so sharp, so focused. Remember how she'd stay up late redesigning my school presentations because good design mattered? Lily's voice cracked. Now she can barely follow a conversation. She stares at nothing for minutes. And the pills? What pills? Lily pulled out a small prescription bottle from her backpack. I found this in her bathroom. It's not prescribed to her. I took the bottle. The label read, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, lorazepam 2 mg. Take as needed for anxiety. Marcus brings these every morning, Lily continued. He tells her they're vitamins that Dr. Mitchell recommended them for stress. But I looked up this drug online. It's a powerful anti-anxiety medication, I said. Wrong doses create chemical dependency and cognitive impairment. Lily nodded, tears threatening. He's drugging her, isn't he, turning my mom into a zombie? But why? I wanted to tell her everything. The phone conversation, the inheritance, the murder plot. But she was 16 and had seen too much already. Lily listened carefully, I said, placing hands on her shoulders. You're right about Marcus. He's dangerous more than you know. But we're going to stop him. How he's a respected doctor. Everyone thinks he's wonderful. We're going to gather evidence, document everything, and be very careful. I looked into her eyes, seeing the same determination that had carried Katie through single parenthood. Are you willing to help me save your mom? She wiped her eyes, straightening her shoulders. What do you need me to do? First, put this bottle back exactly where you found it. We can't let him know we're onto him. Second, keep a journal. What pills he gives her and how she acts afterward. Can you do that without being caught? Yes, I'm good at being invisible when I need to be. And Lily, if he ever suspects you know something, if he makes you feel unsafe, call me immediately. Day or night. Promise me. She nodded solemnly. I promise. But what if we can't save her in time? I took her hand, feeling the strength that came from being Katie's daughter. Then we'll make sure he pays for everything he's done. Some battles are worth fighting, no matter the odds. As we walked back to our cars, I realized Marcus had made his second mistake. He'd underestimated not just the old fool, but the young woman who loved her mother enough to risk everything. The alliance was formed. Evidence gathering would begin. Marcus Blake's world was about to crumble. Friday afternoon, I showed up at Katie's house unannounced with a thermos of homemade soup and what I hoped looked like grandfatherly concern rather than calculated surveillance. Dad! Katie answered the door in her bathrobe at 3 in the afternoon, hair uncombed, eyes unfocused. What a nice surprise. The woman before me bore little resemblance to the sharp daughter I'd raised. Her movements were sluggish speech, slightly slurred with a vacant quality that made my stomach clench. I made vegetable soup and thought you might like some, I said, stepping into the living room. Everything looked normal, but there was an underlying staleness to the air, as if the house itself was holding its breath. That's so sweet. Katie moved toward the kitchen with careful steps like someone walking on a ship in rough seas. Marcus always says I need more vegetables. Where is Marcus today? Hospital. Friday's surgery schedule. She pulled bowls from the cabinet with exaggerated concentration. He works so hard. I'm lucky to have him. The words came out rehearsed like lines she'd been taught to recite. I watched her pour soup, noting how her hands trembled, how she gripped the counter for balance. Katie, are you feeling all right? You seem tired. She laughed hollowly. Just under the weather. Marcus has me on new vitamins. Says they'll help with energy, but they make me so sleepy. As if summoned, the front door opened, and Marcus walked in still in hospital scrubs. His face lit up with apparent pleasure, but I caught the flash of calculation in his eyes. William, what brings you by? Brought Katie some soup. She looked piqued at the birthday party. How thoughtful. Marcus moved to Katie's side, his hand possessively on her back. Though I hope you're not overdoing it, sweetheart. You know what Dr. Mitchell said about your medication schedule. He pulled out a small pill organizer. Speaking of which, time for your afternoon dose. I watched with horror as he shook 2 white pills into his palm. Katie accepted them without question, washing them down with orange juice like an obedient child. What exactly is Katie taking? I asked casually. Marcus's smile never wavered. Mild anti-anxiety medication. Katie's been dealing with stress. You know how it is. Dr. Mitchell thought it would help her sleep better, feel more relaxed. The lie rolled off his tongue smoothly. But I'd seen that prescription bottle, knew those weren't vitamins. Katie was being systematically sedated. I've never known Katie to have anxiety problems. Quite common in women her age. Marcus replied, his professional demeanor sliding into place. Hormonal changes, life transitions, teenage stress. Sometimes we need chemical assistance to maintain balance. Katie nodded along, eyes already growing heavier. Marcus explains it so well. I don't know what I'd do without him. I stayed another hour watching my daughter fade as the medication took hold. By 4:30, she was curled on the couch, barely able to keep her eyes open. Marcus walked me to the door, his mask of concern perfect. Thanks for stopping by, William. Katie appreciates having family who care. She's my daughter. Exactly. And I know you want what's best for her? His tone remained friendly, but there was steel underneath. Sometimes what's best isn't obvious to everyone involved. As I drove away, hands shaking with suppressed rage, I understood I'd witnessed a master manipulator at work. Marcus wasn't just drugging Katie. He was gaslighting her, convincing her that chemical imprisonment was medical care, that her captor was her savior. But he'd made a critical error. He'd let me see the pills, the timing, the routine. He'd given me concrete evidence and revealed just how vulnerable Katie had become. The old fool was learning fast, and Marcus Blake had no idea how dangerous that made him. Monday evening. I was leaving Portland Medical Center after researching lorazepam in their library when Marcus appeared beside my car like a shadow materializing. From the October darkness, William, his voice was calm, but there was something predatory in how he positioned himself between me and the driver's door. Fancy meeting you here. The parking garage was nearly empty at 7 p.m., our voices echoing off concrete walls. I kept my expression neutral, though every instinct screamed danger. Just doing some reading. Amazing what you can learn about medications these days. His smile was razor thin. Research can be dangerous when you don't understand the full picture. Medical decisions are complex, William. Best left to professionals, like Dr. Sarah Mitchell. The name hit him like a physical blow. His mask slipped for a moment, revealing something cold underneath, then snapped back. Sarah is a colleague, a good friend helping Katie through a difficult time. I'm sure she is. I moved toward my car, but Marcus stepped closer, suddenly threatening. William, we need an honest conversation. You've been asking questions. Visiting Katie, unannounced. Making her uncomfortable with your concerns. I'm worried about my daughter. Your daughter is fine. She's getting excellent care from qualified professionals. His eyes were flat, emotionless. But I'm worried about you. All this paranoia, these wild theories, concerning behavior for a man your age. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. I'd seen enough bullies to recognize the pattern. False concern masking genuine menace. What exactly are you saying, Marcus? Cognitive decline manifests in many ways. Paranoid delusions, inappropriate suspicions about family, inability to trust medical authority. He leaned closer. Tragic if you developed complications requiring professional intervention. The message was clear, step back, or he'd have me committed as mentally incompetent. Elegant cruelty. Who would believe the paranoid old man over the respected psychiatrist? That would be convenient for you. It would be necessary. For everyone's safety. His professional demeanor returned. Katie inherits everything when you're gone. The house savings, all of it. She'll be well provided for. And you'll be there to help her manage it. That's what loving husbands do. His smile was poisonous, though you wouldn't understand being alone so long. A car door slammed somewhere in the garage. Marcus immediately stepped back, his threatening posture dissolving into concerned son-in-law helping an elderly man. Think about what I've said, William. Sometimes the kindest thing is stepping back and letting professionals handle things. As he walked away, I caught sight of a woman approaching from the elevator. Attractive professional, early 40s, moving with confident authority. Marcus, sorry I'm late. Surgery ran long. No problem, Sarah. I was just chatting with my father-in-law. Sarah, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. The woman whose name was on Katie's prescriptions, whose voice I'd heard planning my murder. I watched them embrace, noting the intimacy, how she leaned into him with practiced familiarity. This wasn't just professional collaboration, this was personal. Marcus had a partner in every sense. As they walked away together, I heard her laugh at something he whispered, the sound echoing like broken glass. They were comfortable, confident, unaware that the old fool they planned to eliminate had figured out their entire operation. But I'd learned something crucial. Marcus wasn't working alone. Doctor? Sarah Mitchell wasn't just prescribing drugs. She was actively involved in the plot, which meant she had just as much to lose if the truth came out. And that I realized as I got into my car might be exactly the leverage I needed. Thursday morning, I waited outside Sarah Mitchell's private practice office with the patience of a man who'd spent decades managing classroom crises. Getting her alone had required 3 days of careful observation, learning her schedule, finding the right moment when Marcus wouldn't be hovering nearby. She emerged from the building at exactly 11:15, just as she had the previous 2 days, heading for the small cafe across the street. I intercepted her at the crosswalk. Dr. Mitchell, I'm William Carter, Marcus Blake's father-in-law. She turned, and I saw recognition flicker in her eyes along with something that might have been guilt. Up close, she was younger than I had initially thought. Maybe late 30s. With the kind of professional polish that came from years of careful image management. Mr. Carter, what can I do for you? I was hoping we could talk. About Katie. About the medication you've been prescribing. Her composure slipped for just a moment. I'm not sure what you mean. Patient confidentiality. The lorazepam prescribed under your name, but administered by Marcus. The pills that are turning my daughter into a zombie. Sarah glanced around nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the public setting. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. There's a quiet corner in the cafe. 5 minutes later, we sat across from each other in a booth tucked away from the lunch crowd. Sarah's hands wrapped around her coffee cup like it was an anchor, her professional mask, firmly in place but showing cracks around the edges. Mr. Carter, I understand your concern for Katie, but Marcus is providing excellent care. Is he... I pulled out my phone, the recording app already loaded with the audio file Lily had helped me capture 2 nights ago. Before you answer, I think you should hear something. I pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the small space between us, tinny but unmistakable. Yes, Sarah thinks we're going to run away together. Stupid woman actually believes I love her. Once I get the old man's money, I'll dump her ass and disappear. She knows too much anyway. Can't have loose ends. Maybe arrange a little accident for her too, make it look like guilt over helping me. 2 birds, 1 stone. The color drained from Sarah's face as she listened. Her hands began to tremble, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim of her cup. No, she whispered. He wouldn't. We're in love. We're planning a future together. Are you... I stopped the recording. Or are you just another victim he's manipulating? She stared at the phone as if it might bite her. Where did you get this? That's not important. What matters is that you now know what Marcus really thinks of you. You're not his partner, Dr. Mitchell. You're his next victim? Sarah's professional composure crumbled completely. Tears spilled down her cheeks as the full weight of her situation hit her. Oh, God. What have I done, Katie? Those pills? I thought I was helping with her anxiety. Marcus said she was having panic attacks, that she needed something stronger than what her regular doctor would prescribe. How long has this been going on? 6 months, maybe longer. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. He was so convincing. Said Katie was embarrassed about her mental health struggles, that she didn't want it on her permanent medical record. He just needed someone to write the prescriptions, monitor the dosage. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. Her voice broke. I've been alone for so long, and Marcus was... He made me feel special. Important. Like I was saving someone instead of just existing. I felt a stab of unexpected sympathy for this woman who'd been as thoroughly manipulated as my daughter, just in a different way. Marcus was a master at finding people's vulnerabilities and exploiting them. Dr. Mitchell, Sarah, it's not too late to make this right. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. How I've been prescribing controlled substances under false pretenses. I could lose my license. Go to prison. Or you could help me stop him before he kills Katie. Before he kills me. Before he kills you. The words hung between us like a challenge. Sarah stared at her reflection in the coffee wrestling with a decision that would define the rest of her life. What do you need me to do? Help me gather evidence. Document everything. And when the time comes, testify about what he's really been doing. She nodded slowly, resolve hardening in her features. He's been using my prescription pad, my DEA number. I have records of everything. And there's more. He's been taking money from the practice account, saying it's for investments. Can you get me copies? Yes. But William, if we do this, if we expose him, he'll try to destroy us both. He's not just a liar, he's dangerous. I thought about the threat in the parking garage, the casual way Marcus had discussed my murder, the systematic destruction of my daughter's mind and body. Then we'd better make sure we get him first. Saturday afternoon, everything came together, like the final pieces of a puzzle I'd been working on for 3 weeks. Sarah had provided copies of every fraudulent prescription financial records showing Marcus's theft from her practice, and most crucially, she'd agreed to wear a wire during what would be Marcus's final performance. Detective Ray Morrison, an old friend from my teaching days whose son I'd helped through a difficult 4th grade, sat in an unmarked car outside Katie's house. The plan was simple: get Marcus to confess on tape, while Sarah and I were both present as witnesses. You sure about this? William Ray had asked that morning. This guy's dangerous. One wrong move and things could go sideways fast. They're already sideways, Ray. My daughter's being slowly poisoned and he's planning to kill me. How much more sideways can they get? Now, as I knocked on Katie's front door with Sarah beside me, I felt the weight of everything we discovered pressing down like storm clouds. This was it. The moment that would either save my family or destroy what was left of it. Katie answered the door, moving with that familiar but drugged sluggishness that had become her normal state. Dad, Dr. Mitchell, what are you both doing here? We need to talk to Marcus. Sarah said, her voice steady despite the wire taped to her chest. About Katie's treatment plan. Marcus appeared behind Katie, his face cycling through surprise, confusion, and calculation in the span of seconds. Sarah, William, this is unexpected. We need to discuss some irregularities in Katie's prescriptions, I said, pushing past him into the living room. Privately. For a moment, Marcus looked like he might refuse, but his professional training kicked in. Never let the mask slip in front of the patient. Katie, sweetheart, why don't you go rest upstairs? The adults need to have a boring medical conversation. As soon as Katie disappeared up the stairs, Marcus's demeanor shifted. The caring husband facade dropped, replaced by something cold and predatory. What the hell is this about? Sarah stepped forward, her hand trembling slightly but her voice strong. It's about the lorazepam, Marcus. The prescriptions you've been forging under my name. The money you've been stealing from my practice. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sarah, darling, I think you're confused. We're partners, remember? Everything I've done has been for us. Partners. Sarah's voice rose. Is that what you call it when you plan to dump my ass and disappear once you get William's money? When you talk about arranging little accidents? For people who know too much. The color drained from Marcus's face. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, the recording already queued up. She's talking about this. Marcus's own voice filled the room. Stupid woman actually believes I love her. Once I get the old man's money, I'll dump her ass and disappear. The transformation was instantaneous. Marcus's mask didn't just slip. It shattered completely. His face contorted with rage, his hands clenching into fists. You recorded me. You fucking recorded me. We recorded you planning murder, Sarah said, backing toward the door. Multiple murders. Marcus moved faster than I expected for a man his size. He lunged toward Sarah, but I was ready. 69 years old or not, I'd spent decades breaking up playground fights, and some reflexes never fade. I stepped between them, my carpenter's hand still strong enough to shove him backward. Stay away from her. You think you're so smart, old man, Marcus snarled. You think you've won Katie's upstairs right now, loaded up with enough lorazepam to stop her heart. Very believable. The confession spilled out of him like poison, everything we needed and more. But the mention of Katie sent ice through my veins. What did you do to her? What I should have done weeks ago. Finish the job. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a syringe. But first I'm going to finish you. That's when Detective Morrison kicked in the front door, his weapon drawn. Portland Police. Drop the syringe and put your hands where I can see them. Marcus spun toward the new threat, his face wild with desperation. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to use the syringe, but the sight of 2 more officers behind Morrison finally broke through his rage. The syringe clattered to the floor as Marcus raised his hands, his shoulders sagging in defeat. Dr. Marcus Blake, you're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy, Morrison said, moving forward with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. As they led Marcus away, Sarah collapsed onto the couch, shaking with relief and delayed shock. But I was already moving toward the stairs, my heart hammering with fear for Katie. I found her in her bedroom, unconscious but breathing. The paramedics Morrison had stationed outside rushed in, checking her vitals, starting an IV to flush the excess medication from her system. "She'll be okay," one of them told me as they prepared to transport her to the hospital. "You got to her in time." Standing in that bedroom, watching my daughter being loaded onto a stretcher, I realized that Marcus had been right about one thing. I wasn't just an old fool burning through an inheritance. I was a grandfather who declared war on the man trying to destroy his family. And I'd won. 3 weeks later, I stood in my kitchen on a December morning, watching Katie make pancakes for the first time in months. Her movements were careful but purposeful, her spine straight, a mind finally free from chemical fog. "Dad, you're hovering," she said without turning, but I could hear the smile. "Sorry, old habit." I settled at the breakfast table where I'd once planned Marcus's downfall. "It's just good to see you. Present." She flipped a pancake with practiced ease. "It's good to be present. Dr. Chen says withdrawal symptoms should be gone by Christmas." Dr. Chen was Katie's new psychiatrist, recommended by Sarah, who'd kept her license after cooperating fully with the investigation. The medical board had been surprisingly understanding, given the evidence of Marcus's manipulation. "Any word on the trial date?" "March, probably. Marcus's lawyer is trying to plea bargain, but with all the evidence..." I shrugged. 15 to 20 years minimum." Katie nodded calmly. The first days after rescue, she'd been furious at Marcus herself, the stolen months. But anger was a luxury she couldn't afford while healing. The front door opened. "Grandpa, Mom, I brought bagels." Lily burst in with the energy of someone sleeping well again, arms full of bakery bags. At 16, she'd handled the crisis with remarkable maturity, but I could see relief in her eyes now that her mother was truly back. "Everything bagels and cream cheese. And Mom, that weird sesame one you like." "It's not weird," Katie protested, laughing. "It's sophisticated." Lily kissed her mother's forehead. "Oh, Grandpa, I finished the college essay you helped me with. Want to read it?" I took the pages, adjusting my glasses. The title made me pause. What my grandfather taught me about fighting for family. "Lily, you don't have to..." "Yes, I do." Her voice carried the determination that had helped save her mother. "The world needs to know age doesn't make you powerless. That sometimes the people everyone underestimates change everything." Reading her essay about our alliance, the evidence gathering the final confrontation, I felt something shift. For months I'd fought to save my family. Now I realized they'd also saved me. From loneliness, irrelevance, the slow fade society expected from men my age. This is beautiful. But are you sure about sharing something so personal? "Grandpa, you spent your career teaching kids their voices mattered. Now it's time for your voice to matter too." Katie reached across and took my hand. "She's right, Dad. What we did together proves families don't have to accept defeat. That love is stronger than manipulation. Truth stronger than lies. And sometimes the old fool everyone underestimates is actually the wisest person in the room." Outside, Portland's December rain drummed against windows with the same rhythm that had accompanied my planning weeks ago. But now it felt peaceful, like nature settling into comfortable rhythm. "You know what I realized?" I said, looking at these remarkable women who'd stood with me against darkness. "Marcus was right about one thing. I'm just an old fool burning through his inheritance." They started to protest, but I held up my hand. But he was wrong about what that inheritance was. It's not money or property. It's this. Knowing family means fighting for each other, that wisdom comes from experience. And sometimes the most dangerous thing you can face is an old man who refuses to give up on people he loves. Lily grinned. "Should I add that to my essay?" "Add whatever feels true, sweetheart. Truth is the only thing that matters." As we sat eating breakfast together, 3 generations bound by love and tested by fire, I understood. Marcus Blake had given us an unexpected gift. He'd tried to destroy us, but instead showed us exactly how strong we were together. The old fool had learned something new. The best inheritance isn't what you leave behind, but what you build while you're still here to enjoy it. Grandpa's stories like William's remind us that God never wastes our experiences. Every challenge we've faced becomes a weapon in our arsenal when evil threatens our loved ones. At 69, William could have chosen to stay silent to avoid confrontation, but the Lord had been preparing him his whole life for this moment. The profound lesson here is that our society too often discards the wisdom of age, forgetting that Grandpa's stories are filled with battles, fought and won. When Marcus saw an old fool, God saw a seasoned warrior. The Almighty works through those the world considers weak, turning their supposed limitations into unexpected strengths. These Grandpa stories teach us that love requires action, not just sentiment. William didn't just love Katie and Lily. He fought for them with everything he had. God blessed his courage with allies like Sarah and Lily, proving that when we stand for righteousness, he provides the support we need. The most powerful Grandpa stories show us that retirement from work doesn't mean retirement from purpose. William discovered that his greatest calling wasn't teaching children in a classroom, but saving his family from a predator in disguise. Sometimes God saves our most important mission for our final chapters. Never underestimate the power of an elder who refuses to surrender what matters most. What grandpa in your life has shown this kind of courage? Share this story with someone who needs to remember that age is just a number when it comes to protecting family. Subscribe for more incredible tales that celebrate the unsung heroes among us. And ring that bell to join our community of believers in the power of love and determination.